Hello and welcome to the workshop for week 5. We will be going over the process of making a game from start to finish, all the way from ideation through to polish and having a playable game that you can give to people. I've got a few people in the Discord call, so if I pause to read for a moment, that is why. But I will make sure that any questions asked will be spoken out loud, so everyone listening to the recording afterwards will know what is going on as well. Thank you, Bruce. Much appreciated. He just said my intro was very nice, so thank you very much. All right, let's dive straight into it. So, this game I made is a stacker game, so it's just a clone of an existing arcade game that I made in one evening. So it was almost like a game jam game type of thing. I'll give you a quick demonstration of how it works. So, are you ready? Press space. When we press space, we get this nice little intro graphic here, and then the game loads up. And this is pretty much what it looks like. So you've got your little brick tiles that are floating back and forth along the screen here, and when you press space, they stop. And you place them down, and then you get another one that's a little bit faster. When you place this one down, I'll wait for it to go back over, it lines up. But if I miss there, only the blocks that are over the old ones will stack on top. So essentially, it becomes a reflex game for how quickly you can... Well, see, I'm not very good. I didn't even make it to the minor prize. That was a bit tragic. But the idea is that you get all the way up to the minor prize and then to the major prize. And I definitely won't be able to do it on recording, but I promise you I have made it to the major prize on the 1.5 speed. But that's another thing as well, so you can change the speed. So if I bring it all the way up to 3, it's going to be very intense. Wait for that intro clear for the screen, and then you'll notice even this starting brick gets a lot faster, and it gets really quite speedy. Oh, yes. Nah, didn't quite make it any further. All right, well, there we are. That's essentially the game. So it'll tell you what row you made it to. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 rows in total, so I was up to my 8th row, which is what this is. Could probably say 7. You can really make it say what you want. And then we've got some just cute little graphics for the Club Carnival and the Game Dev Club here on the side. Pressing enter will reset the game, and tab will make it full screen there, which horribly breaks the recording, so I won't do that. All right, I'll close out of this, and we'll get right into how I made it. It's a fairly simple process. Like I said, it only took me one night, and I am far from an adept developer. But this one, yeah, I didn't have to do too much research on this. There were definitely a few parts that stumped me, but hopefully I can keep this tutorial nice and short. So the first thing that I do is I create a game development document. So I've got just a Google Drive folder here, which has got some assets in it. So I've got the block picture here, which is tiny on this screen, but if I zoom in, you can see it's just a pixel art graphic there. Reset that. And then this development document, which is the main thing here. You don't need to write one of these for such a small game, but it does help. I like to try and write one for everything I do. So really simply, for this one, I just wrote the gameplay loop, which is like, what is the main mechanic that'll keep you playing the game? Hello, Ryan. How you doing? Welcome. I didn't see when you joined in. My Discord sounds are always muted when doing the recordings. Not by choice. Discord just does that. We got Justin as well. Excellent. I might just restart that little section for the guys that just popped in. So just going over the stacker game that I made for the Curtin Carnival. Essentially up to just the very starting area. This development document I like to write at the start. So we've got the gameplay loop, which is essentially how do you play the game, what keeps you doing it, what keeps you trying again, which is obviously trying to stack the blocks up as high as possible. It's a very Flappy Bird-esque, just repeat until you give up style gameplay loop. The requirements, so a row of initially 3 blocks that move right to left. It needs to stop when a button is pressed, dropping any squares that aren't above. If no blocks are left, the game ends. The speed must increase every row, and reaching rows, this says 11 or 15, I think it's 7 or 10 actually. 7 or 10 gives you a major or minor prize respectively. Unlike the normal stacker game, you don't have to forfeit your row. 7 prize to go to row 10. Yeah, so on the day we had little lollies that we gave out for those that got to the minor prize, and more lollies for those that reached the major prize. And then some final stuff, some optional features being post-processing, animations, sound effects, and randomization or rigging it. It is an arcade game, so the actual game is very, very rigged. I believe I did some research before I built it into how the game worked, but essentially it'll only let one in every however many people. So when you set the game up, they put in like an iPad and they say, all right, I don't want anyone to win for 100 plays of the game, and then after 100 plays of the game, people are allowed to win. So that's essentially how they make their money back off the stacker games. Yeah, right? I thought it was very dodgy. So even if all the skill in the world won't let you win if the person who set the game up decides it's not time to win yet, that they haven't made enough money. But the minor prizes you can always get to, those aren't rigged. Those are always just little trinkets. All right, so with this document in handy, it's time to jump in. I guess the next thing to address after you've got your idea is what engine are you going to use? So I know, personally, it comes down to, first, the capabilities of your engine. Is your engine, which is to say, I should clarify for those who aren't aware, an engine is something like Unreal or Unity or Godot. It's the framework you build your game in, instead of just coding it by hand like I know some of the computer science students need to do with OpenGL or something like that. Sounds awful. But yes, so evaluate whether your engine can create the game. For a simple 2D game like this, you can quite comfortably say that most engines will be able to do something like this, but some are designed with 3D in mind, which this is not. Next is how comfortable you are with it. I only had one night to make this game, so I picked the engine that I'm most comfortable in, and that is Godot, which you'll see just here on the screen right now. I won't go through how I made the game line by line, node by node. That's not really what this workshop is about. It's more about the process generally. So the next step, not going too specific into how Godot works, was playing around, just trying to get some really simple graphics on the screen. So the first thing I did was I just created this block scene here. I dropped my graphic in, and I just stuck this thing on here to see if it was still on the screen, and that's what deletes it when it falls off. But essentially, yeah, so once I had this on the screen, I just placed a whole bunch of them. I created a new scene, let's do 2D scene. And I placed a whole bunch of these blocks around just to see. Save that really quickly. Yeah, popped up. I was like, perfect. I've got my blocks on the screen now. That's working how I want. Now it is time to try and build the area. So I created just a whole bunch of colorful rectangles and graphics and things to build the area. And this intro animation that you get when the game starts and you press space, this is actually one of those things where it's a bug becomes a feature, I guess you could say. Not so much a bug, but essentially that this was my test when I first did the game, to fill up the whole gameplay area, just to make sure that all of those cubes were working how I wanted them to, or squares, they're not cubes, sorry. And that they loaded up nicely. Long before any of this movement or input was done, it's pretty much just an animation that I did by hand. So here is the animation. Essentially creates one, giving the offset based on which iteration we're in, with a 0.02 second timer between each one, and then it just drops all the rows with 0.05 seconds in between to create that pretty animation. Or at least I think it's pretty. It gives it a little bit more pizzazz rather than just starting straight into the game. But yeah, then when does the workshop run until? It essentially runs until I run out of things to talk about. It is not a particularly formal process, but it is recorded. The person who asked that question is not in the call, so just give me one moment to reply to them in chat. Until I... chuck a smiley face on there for added friendliness, and there we go. All right, back to the workshop. So next, very simply, building it up system by system, and not going into what the actual code here does, because I could happily sit here and talk for hours about what all of this does and how I made the blocks and so on and such forth. This is much more about where I started, and skills you can apply to all of your games as well. So essentially you want to start with pick a single element. It doesn't need to be the single element of your game. This one is very simple, so the cube was the obvious place to start. But if you've got a bit more complicated game, just pick something and get it into the game. Create something, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more on top of that. So a good example, if I go out of this, is I'm working on a 3D game at the moment. And the process for that so far has been create a character and get that character to move. So this is where I'm at, and this is the whole thing. So I created, or my friend created a model, and we managed to get it into the editor. And then step by step, we did a little bit more. So the first thing was no animation at all, just getting it to move around static facing forwards. So it just went up and then sideways, just in this position you see it in now. Then after that, we got it to face the direction, just like snap instantly to the direction it was moving in. And then after that, got a little bit of animation in so that it just snapped to the animation, snapped to the directions, and then after that we added in the smoothing, so you can see that it kind of like eases into the animation. It doesn't snap there. And also when you turn, it's nice and smooth. It doesn't snap into the turning, which is also nice. But yes, so a very iterative process. Once something works, then you move on to the next thing you want until it has all the functionality you need it to. So for this game, getting the blocks to go up in that animation was the first step, then just having them move along the bottom. So I created just this row scene, essentially. I don't even know if the game will let me play this. Yeah, here we go. So this is the row scene. So this was my next step. So it just moves back and forth on the blank screen with nothing at all. And this is the object that I place multiple times. So every time you start a new row, I just stick another one of these down. Essentially, it's the same logic that powers it. And then I put those one on another until you run out of cubes. And this is just some very simple list stuff, moving around and displaying only certain items in the list, moving it back and forwards. So once those basic mechanics were working, it was time to do some testing. And testing is always a very important step when you're doing any type of game development. So just playing it. And like I said, I promise I am better than my first attempts would suggest. But essentially just sat there and for half an hour or so just kept playing this game until I found some bugs. And I did find some bugs. There are a few issues, and there still are. This game is not perfect by any means. Look, I won. I told you I was good at this. But yeah, figuring out what there is. So one of the bugs that still exists, and I couldn't be bothered to fix it, to be honest, is that you'll notice that it moves off the screen one, and that is intentional, that it depresses into the side of each screen by one less than the number of blocks you have left. And the idea is that if you were to push it off the screen like that, that's only one block you've got left, that you've lost now those other 2 blocks. However, it is still technically 3 blocks there. So now, on the side, even though you can't see them, it's like you've stacked these all up on top of each other. So even though I've only got a 1 cube thing on the side, it looks like I have stacked just these. So now you'll see, even though I've got this whole kind of, it's almost a nerd pole of stacker cubes, that I've still got 2 left to place, which is a little bit cheaty. Yes, very strange looking there. So that's one bug that I would fix if I decided to move back to this code, and I might one day and have a look. I'm sure I could fix it, but it is a matter of time. And that's probably a good segue into another point of making any game is you've got to set yourself a point where it is good enough for what it needs to be. If it's a personal project and you have all the time in the world, then absolutely wait, fix the bugs, write them down. Always having something like a Trello board or even like the game development document that I had here. You could have a bugs section of this, that as you find them, you can add them and remove them as you solve them. But for this, that bug was too inconsequential, and it was already 2 a.m, so I decided that I was going to just let that one be, and that people could just deal with that one there. The next stage, I guess, is just making it prettier. So finding custom fonts for the messages and the words up here, creating this speed dial thing at the top was not originally in the I guess the instruction book or my requirements. Yeah, it wasn't in the requirements to be able to do and adjust the game. This was more for the people on the day, if it was really easy and they were running out of lollies, that they could boost it up and make the game a little bit harder. Adding in this graphic, which I just grabbed from the club, and some text here. And these are all just like single sprites that you can move around and put anywhere. I've just chucked them on here. It'll stick it right in the middle and make it very annoying. So it's no complexity there at all. But it's effective. And these little things, these polish parts, are something that are really important in making the game the extra way, or taking it that extra bit further. Because if I remove all of this, or if I just hide them, it's probably easier. Hide that, hide that, hide that, hide all of those, and that one as well. It just looks very plain, I think. And even though the game is absolutely identical, it doesn't have that same charm or anything. It is very simple. And some people may like that. That might be what you're going for, in which case, absolutely go for it. But yeah, I wanted a little bit more festivities around it. It was a carnival game, I suppose. So you need a little bit more decoration and things to bring people in. Trying to get people to come into the stall and give it a shot and want to try again. And these little things, just like a little graphic or a happy club carnival that personalize it and let people know that we made it as well. That was a big one. A big reason I stuck Curtin Game Dev Club on there is to show people that this was a game that one of us made, that we didn't just steal it off the internet. Yes. And that it was something we did create ourselves, which obviously for a game development club is important. There's not too much left to it, to be honest. It's a fairly simple process going from, or at least in theory, going from ideation to that polish. But there are the complexity comes in finishing each stage, I suppose, and moving on to the next one. You don't want to get too stuck up in perfecting everything. I know I've gotten caught up in planning for hours, writing out plans and writing out ideas, but not actually making anything, which is something I struggle with personally. Other people may struggle with the mechanics stage, always trying to get everything absolutely perfect and no bug at all can make it through. And yeah, you got to think even the games that are released, there are still bugs there because bugs take time to fix, and if you try to fix absolutely every single bug, it takes a long time, and sometimes you can't find them as well. I wasn't at the stall day, so I don't know if they found any other bugs or ran across any other issues, but that's definitely something you'd want to ask people and see what they found. How did I choose the color scheme? Fairly arbitrarily, to be honest. I sort of based it on the color scheme of the editor. So Curtin Game Dev's got its own color scheme, which is the sort of the yellow and green. And then, as you can see around the edge, Godot is kind of this bluish, dark bluey, grey type of color, and with the white text. So I decided just to copy that one. And the green cubes are for Curtin Game Dev Club. I grabbed one of our green colors. We've got a little color guide that we use for the club to make sure everything sort of fits in with the same style. Yeah. Any more questions at all about this game or game development generally in regards to creating the ideas, picking your engine, doing some of the blocking out, I guess, of your mechanics, and then creating the actual gameplay loop, polish, distribution then. This is just a single exe game, so if I find it in the Curtin Game Dev thing. Oh, it's not in there. I must have moved it somewhere else. But yes, it is essentially a single exe that you can run, and everything, all the assets, all the code and the whole game is contained within one executable, which is nice. Any other questions? All good. All right. Well, I said this was going to be a fairly short workshop, fairly simple, only about half an hour or so, which is good. Don't want them to be taken up too much of your guys' evenings. So thank you very much for coming along to this one. As always, if you have any other questions you think of, feel free to chuck them in the Discord, and we will do our best to answer them. But otherwise, have a fantastic night. Take care.